We are live, The Juke with Dr. Jen Welter. I am your host, Mitch Milani, joined by, of course, the one and only Dr. Jen Welter. We are here to discuss some football, of course, for the next hour and a half, talking about Tom Brady, not leaving anybody alone, talking about this and that and saying this quarterback sucks and this guy, I'm going to retire him too. And now he's saying it's coming to the end. We'll talk about that in just a second. We're also going to discuss Zach Ertz, close to coming to the Buffalo Bills, potentially in a trade. Stephon Gilmore is upset with Bill Belichick and the Patriots, and a lot more. Jen, first, before we get to Tom Brady, we have plenty of time to get to Tom Brady, but I want to talk to you about your weekend and what happened. I know that you ran into Justin Jefferson. So I want to get the lowdown here. I want to get the info.
Look, so I was getting gritty all weekend with Justin Jefferson. It was pretty dope. We did a challenge to see if we could get the most kids to get gritty. I found out some great facts on him. Doing the research on him was fun, Mitch. Turns out he's been a competitor since birth. And he first in like fourth grade was number 3 in out of 3.5 million kids across the country in the punt, pass, and kick. And now, of course, you know, my mind automatically goes, wait, so he can pass? Wait. And so I asked him, do you think that you could still compete on that level today? And he said, yeah, definite competitor in this one. And I said, if you had to choose whether you were now going to have to punt, pass, or kick, which one would it be? And he informed me it would without a doubt be a pass, and that we should look for the Vikings to put something like that in this year.
Okay, very interesting. You know what's funny about that? Every time I think of punt, pass, kick, I think of that Andy Reid clip where he's like 10 feet tall and then the rest of the kids are on the field. I mean, that's one of my favorite clips in NFL history, and it has nothing to do with the NFL. It's just Andy Reid being an absolutely ginormous child.
I mean, it's pretty amazing. And Justin Jefferson brought that childlike energy all day. He was out there with the kids. You know, you have a couple of different personalities when, you know, stars are out there with the kids. Some of them are like, yeah, I'm cool. And one day you'll be cool like me. Not Justin Jefferson. He was getting gritty all day long, challenging the kids. I, of course, told them all there were no other emotes allowed on the field. Otherwise, they would all get the L. But Justin had a great time. And of course, he came over to tackle with me because he wanted to prove that he could tackle better than Tyreek Hill. So I am sure we will see that challenge or footage come out down the road.
Who do you think was a better tackler, Tyreek Hill or Justin Jefferson?
Different tackling styles, definitely. But I will say that the thing that Justin Jefferson did that was probably really smart and gave him an advantage is that rather than just coming up and saying, I want to do it, he made me give him a specific demo first. So he had the opportunity to watch and learn, as opposed to coming in and then having me coach up. So by the end, I would say they both did a pretty good job. But Justin Jefferson did hedge his bets a little bit because he knew he wanted to learn from me and to teach him first, because he, unlike Tyreek Hill, did not play special teams his first year. And so he doesn't have 7 recorded tackles like Tyreek Hill did in his first year. So I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go with he was smart, and he did tell me that he has called out Pat P in practice because Pat P used to play with his brothers. And so he has been using Pat P's veteran experience as a corner to help him take his receiving skills to the next level. He said, I always want the best. And Pat P actually commented that he was impressed. He's never had him call anybody out like that before. So look for Justin Jefferson to have some new moves to bring with him to the Vikings on the field next year, including quite possibly that receiver pass play.
And I think probably a few more touchdown celebrations. So I'm excited for that. Excited for Justin Jefferson, what he can do. Let's transition into our man, Tommy B, TB12, Tom Brady, the GOAT, whatever you're going to call him. Tom Brady, of course, has been making a lot of headlines lately, whether it's his jabs on Twitter or his remarks on television, calling some other quarterbacks out. Tom Brady has now come out suggesting that his future in the NFL is coming to an end. And Jen, as a Patriots fan, as a Tom Brady fan, I cannot tell you how many times I have seen an interview where Tom Brady was asked this question, or when Tom Brady says it's coming to an end. Now, what we speculated as Patriots fans is that Tom Brady's end will come when Giselle wants it to end. So that's basically what he said, is like, it's up to Giselle when it wants to be done. But it does feel like these next 2 seasons, as Tom Brady has signed an extension earlier this offseason, partly to help out his team in the cap situation for their picking everybody up and re-signing everybody. The next 2 seasons, this year and next year, feels like the end for Tom Brady. Do you think, Jen, it is the end for Tom Brady?
Mitch, right now, I feel like we're getting a whole lot of goat's milk from Tom Brady. Like, he is milking every single headline that he can possibly get in. I think it's like, I'm finally free from Belichick's Belichickian philosophy where we could not say anything, and now I'm making up for all of it in a very short time, whether it is jabs at another quarterback or it's almost over. Like, I feel like it's the slow roll of the steamroller in Austin Powers, where you're like, no. And meanwhile, who knows how many years we have yet. But I am going to say it probably is based a lot on the patience of Giselle and when she does want her quarterback back, because anybody who's been around this game knows it is more than a 24/7 job. It is a 24/7 job. Although talking to Warren Moon just yesterday, he did inform me that he thought he was busy when he was a quarterback. And then when he went in the broadcast booth, he found out that, like we all know, with the research and the practices and going and attending, he's like, I never found any extra time, Jen. So Tom Brady, you may have to actually leave the States with your wife and family and go to a country where you're not recognized, quite possibly Iceland. And if you actually want to have some time back in your life, it's going to be a shift focus in life, but it's definitely not going to be just time. So I think we're going to see Tom Brady. He's definitely in this year. If they win, it's going to be really hard for him to retire. So coming to an end is probably like the equivalent of Bill Belichick saying, like, yeah, we've got a few tricks up our sleeves, as he cuts them and they get shorter and shorter, right? Like, we're not hiding anything. We're not surprised. This is no new information, but you and I both know anytime Tom Brady says anything, right? It's like, we're gonna update. It reminds me of going all the way back to Deflategate, when we could not get off Tom Brady's balls, right? Like, they would give us updates to tell us that there was no update. Like, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to report that we have no new information as to whether or not Tom Brady's balls were properly inflated. We do not have a squish test.
By the way, Jen, we still don't have any information that suggests that he deflated footballs or any information to suggest that the suspension even made any sense. But you know what did come out of that situation that I think we're kind of seeing like more of Tom Brady nowadays from that situation? I remember there was a specific thing that came out when in regards to his emails. Somehow they got to his emails, and it was an email between Tom Brady and his dad where he was talking about, like, from way back, I don't know, this was like, I think, want to say 2013, 2014 range. He was talking about Peyton Manning and comparing him to Peyton Manning and saying Peyton was going to be done soon because of his arm strength and all this stuff. And he was kind of taking jabs at, like, Peyton Manning, one of his rivals, but also one of his friends.
Right.
And it turned out to be true, but this is kind of the Tom Brady we're seeing now. It's like the unfiltered Tom Brady. It's like the emails come to life Tom Brady.
Right. And those emails are telling. And you said that he was, throwing some jabs at some other quarterbacks. Mitch, what did you think about those jabs that he was throwing? Was there any truth to them, or was he just
Yeah.
throwing a little shade?
I think like it's just a way for Tom to be like, I don't know why everyone keeps doubting me, or like, why would you not want me on your team? I just feel like because of the whole thing with the Patriots, where I think a lot of it stemmed from he wasn't getting enough recognition or love from Bill Belichick in that way of like, yes, you are different. You're the GOAT. Like, give me my due. And I just think now he's kind of like, yeah, I'm this guy. Like, I'm not going to really say it publicly, but I'll say it in a different way. And I think there was a lot of teams that he was interested in. I think there was the Niners were one of them. I think the Saints were one of them. And I don't know which quarterback he's really talking about. And some people say it was Jimmy G. Some people say it was Mitchell Trubisky. Some people say it was, I don't think it was Drew Brees just because of the respect there. And some people say it was Derek Carr. Like a lot of people were saying and throwing out different ideas there. But I just think it really comes down to like Brady just having that chip on his shoulder still of being like, F you, because I'm going to go to Tampa and win the Super Bowl. Like that sort of thing.
It would make a lot of sense to me if it was Mitch Trubinsky, for example. I mean, that we could all see, like if they decided to stick with him, okay. But I don't see that he would have wanted to go to Chicago in the first place. The one that would make sense to me would be Jimmy G.
You think it would?
The 49ers. It could if they're not tight, and he got rid of him once, and everybody said he was buried behind Brady and this, that, and the other. That's a team that quarterbacks would want to go to. And that's the reason why it comes to mind, right? Like you think about it, if he's gonna leave New England, he's got
that's his childhood team as well.
Right. Like he's got to go to a team that's turnkey to win. Right. I knew Tampa was a few moves away from where they were, right? Bruce Arians wasn't going to go there if it wasn't close. He knew it was close, and then he knew he could make a difference when he went there. He made a difference, and then you put Tom Brady in there, absolutely. But the team that was kind of locked, stocked, and ready to rock was, on paper, the 49ers. Now, nobody could have foreseen that they would just have this, everything that, bad news Bears, right? We talked about the Bears. They are already bad news. We knew they were bad news, but
yeah,
San Francisco.
I will say though, the Bears
Bears
did make the playoffs at 8-8 with Mitch Trubisky at quarterback.
Yeah, but Mitch, that doesn't tell me much. What kind of 8-8 is it?
It doesn't?
And do you no?
I mean, they have a guy that's not a starter anymore, and they went 8-8.
Right, but it's still not a great team.
Okay.
It's not better than San Francisco was going into that
No,
season.
for sure.
But that's what I'm talking about. Like they ended up being the bad news Bears, but if you looked at that roster before they had all those injuries, they were highly favored to repeat their appearance at the Super Bowl. No doubt. So he could have said, boom, flip that switch. And now I get to go in here, beastly tight end. I mean, you give me Juszczyk, you give me Kittle. I mean, come on, right? They brought the fullback back better than Justin Timberlake brought the sexy back. Okay. And I get to go in with those dudes, and I would have looked at that highly favorable in terms of a situation where I could go in and win another Super Bowl. So I could see it being Jimmy G, especially if it was, we remember the narrative of, oh, he was wasted in New England and blah, 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 blah. Okay. Wasted.
Yeah. Belichick really wanted him and wanted to trade Brady, and
yep.
Okay. I can buy it. I think some people have made good points about it possibly not being Jimmy G, just because they have the same agent. And like business wise, Brady saying that out loud wouldn't be like him. So that's something, as we have the little quote here. Won't forget the NFL team that passed on him. He's sticking with that mother effer. Yeah, that's what he said.
Can't wait to find out who that finally was, because it's going to have to come out eventually.
Eventually it will come out. I think person that it was probably knows who it is.
Oh, I'm for sure they do.
And the team knows for sure.
The team for sure knows who it is. And they're like, oh, man, we got goat's milk on our face worse than egg on our face, right? Like, ooh, he just threw that shade all the way across the bow, just like he was throwing around Lombardi trophies because he has so many. Okay. Like, yeah, he tossed that boat to boat and he threw that right out at him. Like, holler at your boy with yet another Lombardi that I take it so lightly. I could throw it over the water, not just throw it, but throw it at a place where you would have had to hire divers to go down there. Thankfully, he probably has his own submarine, so it's fine.
Getting back to the it's coming to an end conversation just a little bit. I do think for Tom Brady, you kind of alluded to it a little bit. There is no way, like I just can't picture Tom Brady without an injury being bad at football. Like I can't just see age taking him from this level to that level, because to start with, he physically has never been the best quarterback in the league anyways.
Right.
So what would really have to happen is for some reason his arm completely falls off in terms of his ability to throw, down the field and that sort of thing. And you could argue last year he was better at that than the year before. So really, it has to be some sort of injury thing, or it's just going to be Tom Brady just saying goodbye, still being a pretty good player. That's most likely what's going to happen. And if that's the case, this Bucs team is going to be really, really good the next 2 years. And it's going to be really difficult for Tom Brady to say goodbye unless he goes out. I feel like Drew Brees, he's going to have his last game be like a bad game. And that's unfortunate, but that's just kind of the way I see it.
I hope it doesn't have to. I hope it doesn't have to be a bad game to say it's been enough. I don't want to see him win a last Super Bowl kind of limping through it like Peyton did.
Yeah.
That to me was just I know you got another one and
it was tough.
Cool and all, but watching it to me was so disappointing and it was so painful. That's how I remember Peyton Manning now. And that last not so hoorah was, meh. Why could you not go out on top and be like, you can see me dropping dimes when I run a kids camp, y'all. As opposed to,
yeah, Peyton couldn't throw the ball 20 yards.
No, it was bad. And I certainly hope that Brady does not go out and go down like that.
I hope not, but just knowing, feeling like I understand the competitor and seeing him play all these years, it just feels like, and I think Brady has said this himself, he's not going to retire until he sucks. And I understand his goal is 45 years old. I think that's been his goal the whole time, is to prove that he can play to 45, because you have to think about it. His whole next stage in life is the TB12 thing. And it's been that kind of for a while, that transition into his next phase is that TB12 brand. And that brand all is stems off of his success on the field at an older age.
Right.
So,
and being able to extend your legacy, golly,
right.
Not extend my English, extend your legacy through nutrition and training. And I get that. And you're probably very right. I will probably not tune into that last game so that it decimates my mental picture of him, or I'll have to go back and watch old games just to get it to erase. I sometimes feel like I wish I could erase that last season from my memory and my recall of Peyton, because
has that done that to you for Drew Brees?
Yes. No, it didn't to Drew Brees to the same extent, because he wasn't as unpalatable to me as Peyton was, right? He still did some things okay. He wasn't vintage that guy Drew Brees, but it wasn't so pitiful that I wanted to go
even
out
though
there.
Peyton won.
Right, but I wanted to go out there and protect Drew Brees, right? I wanted to be stop it.
Give him a hug.
That's not what I felt like. That's how I felt about Peyton Manning, though.
Okay.
Don't hit the goat. He's a fragile goat now. He doesn't even have a goat lope anymore. Stop it. Y'all need training wheels with Peyton right now. I think about it, and it's hard because you've got it until you don't, right? And you really, talking to some of these guys who played ridiculously long careers, right? Talking to Damon Allen, he was like, there was a time and I just knew it, right?
Yeah.
And Warren said it. Warren Moon said, like, when I started um resenting the work, right? He's like, that's when I knew it wasn't time for me anymore, because it was just, I wasn't like fired up to be the guy that I am. And so, if Tom Brady gets to that point, right? Like right now, part of the reason why that team is great is because of his leadership in his work ethic, right? It's not just his ability, it's also like, man, we just won one, we got to get ready for the next one. It's people being attracted to him. It's all of those things, that magnetism, that has brought additional talent and leveled up that whole organization.
Right.
And as long as he can still do that, the team will be great. But if he starts to get to that point where it's like, oh, I can't believe I have to go to practice, or man, I really don't want to turn on this game, or any of those, then that magic starts to go away. And that's what you hear from a lot of the guys when it's just like, it's to the end.
Yeah, it's almost like you're there, but you want to be somewhere else. Like it could be like, oh, I want to be with my kids right now or something for a guy at that age. So
Right.
we have a guy in Tom Brady who has won a lot of Super Bowls. We're going to transition to a team that has won absolutely 0 Super Bowls, but they went to 4 in a row and they lost all of them. I'm talking about the Buffalo Bills. Sorry to our producer, who is a Bills fan, but he's very excited about this. We're
He's
talking about
tragic
another
right now.
older
He's
player,
like,
though. Another
mhm.
older player in Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz could potentially be on his way to Buffalo to give this offense a little bit of a veteran boost, a nice complimentary in the middle of the field playmaker for the Buffalo Bills. This is a team for a long time that has really been adding around Josh Allen, whether it's been on the offensive line to start or then adding a Stephon Diggs and a Cole Beasley at wide receiver, recently in Emmanuel Sanders. So they're kind of gathering these older proven players. And now they're looking to add a tight end into the mix, where I feel like Dawson Knox has not really been getting it done. Their starting tight end from a season ago, young player. I do think they're looking to upgrade that position. I'm not sure how much Zach Ertz has left, but I wouldn't say it would be a bad move for any team to bring him in as a complementary piece. So, Jen, what's your thoughts on potentially Zach Ertz to the Bills?
I like the move. Obviously, like you said, this is veteran leadership and it's also skill and it's a big target. He's always going to be a guy who can get it done, even if it's not the it level that he once had, right? Like he's still going to have an it factor and you're going to have to honor it. And there's always a mismatch, right? Those guys that are that big and that strong and that talented and able to bring the ball in, they don't grow on trees. That's why there's such a difference maker on whatever team they're in. And if you have younger guys that a veteran can come in and also help level them up, they're going to get like, then even those guys who are borderline, right, or younger are going to have easier matchups, because if you have one guy who can roll on the defense and likely take it, you're going to put it to the more veteran guy. So now you're going to get, if you go double tight, now you're going to get who likely have 2 mismatches, right? Like, and one might be more pronounced than the other, and one might be a better, run versus pass. One might have a distinct run advantage, right? The other one might have a distinct pass advantage, especially depending on the packages that are used. But you're definitely creating mismatches on that side of the ball. The defense, it's really, really hard to cover double tight well. Right? Because if you have a run tight end, then you've got to stack a bigger guy to that side. Bigger guy usually not necessarily as good in coverage. So if you have a guy who can do it well, okay, now you take that away. But then what do you have on the backside? What do you have on that, that second tight end who's almost like your H tight end, right? Who could be somebody that you slide around a little bit. If that guy is a really good pass threat, you likely have a really distinct size mismatch there, because you're having to drop down either, you're having to either bring a safety or you're putting that backside linebacker out there. And I always say, like, backside linebackers, we cover because we have to, not necessarily because we want to or we're best there, right? A lot of those guys would rather be more in the box first. So you can do a lot of things from a playmaking ability on that team. And I remember Big Baby Huey, their big tight end, who I literally thought was a tackle eligible play when I looked off and looked back real quick, because I had just we were doing like a watch party and I was educating some of, the females on different stuff that they might see. Right.
Yeah.
And why you had to, I literally had just explained tackle eligible. And I walked out of the room and I came back and I just, saw this big guy, catch a ball. And I was like, did it just happen? He's so big. He could have played on the line, which means you're probably going to put him to your strong side and you could put Ertz and release him off and he's going to have a mismatch. He'll have a big time there, especially with a quarterback like Josh Allen being able to target him. It's a good move.
Yeah, I think whenever you're adding just especially at positions of need, which I would consider tight end a position of need for Buffalo, but I just like stacking up receiver weapons on a team, especially in this day and age where the more threats you have, the better. The more different type of players you have. Like the way I think of a receiving core is the same way I think of a basketball team. Like you want to have like a point guard, you want to have a power forward, you want to have a center, like different sizes, different skills, and different matchups that you can take advantage of. And again, I don't think Zach Ertz is anywhere near his prime, but in Buffalo, as opposed to a place like Philadelphia, he's not going to have to be like taking double teams and really like taking the best safety from the opposing team or whatever it is. He's going to probably be playing on a linebacker or somebody of that nature. And I think a big thing with Buffalo later in the season, we saw Cole Beasley get hurt. And that really hurt their production in the AFC Championship and later in the season. And they added Emmanuel Sanders, and now they've potentially added Zach Ertz. That will help that middle of the field, that route running there, and just get open. And Zach Ertz, like this guy right here, is Jason Witten. I mean, Jason Witten played how many years where he couldn't run? Like, yeah. I mean, he couldn't even run vertically, but how many catches did he make underneath the defense, just getting open in key spots? So if Zach Ertz can do that with Stephon Diggs and Beasley and Gabriel Davis and Emmanuel Sanders, I mean, he could just be a nice little addition there, as we saw kind of Gronk was as well with the Bucks, who he was kind of complimentary, but kind of in more of a versatile way as well. But Zach Ertz, I just think would be a nice little addition to the Bills as a team that's a premier threat in the AFC to help them maybe keep up with a team like Kansas City.
He absolutely will be. And also one of the things you said underneath the coverages, which is great, but he's also going to be a big red zone target for them, right? When you have a small, hard to cover receiver like Cole Beasley in that slot, if you can put a big target also in that red zone, then what you have is a real challenge, because you have to pick your poison. And having Stephon Diggs, that's poison, right? It's like you have a big.
Well, you have to take him out. Like, right. You can't. Yeah,
you have to. Right. So you have to. And now you have if you looked at snakes, right? We have Cobra over here with Stephon Diggs. Now you've got a little pit viper with Cole Beasley. And now you have a boa constrictor with Zach Ertz, right? Like, you're not going to be able to divide the resources and take on all of that different weaponry in a small area, because tight ends become very, 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 very powerful, especially in that red zone, and especially when you're going to have to double Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, right. Great point. All right. So Zach Ertz, let us know what you think going to potentially the Buffalo Bills. Final note here in terms of news is that the New Orleans Saints have signed their premier All-Pro right tackle Ryan Ramczyk to a 5-year contract extension worth $96 million with $60 million guaranteed, which is the key number there. It would make him the highest paid right tackle in the NFL. obviously he is vital to this team, this offensive line, to Sean Payton's offense, to now Jameis Winston protecting him. I felt while everybody would talk about Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara and Drew Brees, of course, they should be talked about, but I felt really since 2017, this last run for the Saints has been all about that strength of the offensive line, specifically the 2 tackles with Teron Armstead and Ryan Ramczyk, both fantastic players. He's still young. I think it's obviously a great contract. I'm a little surprised that the Saints even had this money to dish out, considering they haven't had any money. But yeah, just a great player. I think it's a good signing. Jen, your thoughts?
You know, you're spot on, Mitch. There's not a lot I can add. It's going to be really important, though, with that quarterback transition to make sure that O-line is solid. Because, right, I mean, you know, let's use your boy Brady again.
Yep.
When you switch over the offense, the reads are not as fast, right? And it could be 0.1 of a second. This is not dogging anybody out, but it's still learning how to command a new offense. And that line becomes your wall of protection. Again, we know I love Baker, the commercial maker, and I tell you all the time, he should write love letters to his offensive line on a daily basis, because his success is directly related to their ability to put that princess on a freaking pedestal and not have her get knocked off, right? Like, that is so much of it. And as Kansas City taught us, you don't know how valuable it is until you don't have it. Right? You don't want people noticing your O-line all of a sudden, right? And that's what that was, right? Like, you want them to be a wall. They are selfless guys by nature. You don't want them in the spotlight, because guess what? Just like a cornerback, oftentimes when they're in the spotlight, it's because it was not good. It's when they're going, oh God, oh, did you see what, oh man. So yes, absolutely solidify that offensive line. You are handing the keys of the kingdom to one of the most iconic franchises in the National Football League over to the next generation. And the next generation's success in this one will be directly related to the offensive line, because not only is it just in protecting him, but we need that run game. We need that run game to be solid. So again, defenses have to respect it. I want Alvin Kamara to be giving them whiplash with his dreads, so that they say, oh man, we can't do that again. We've got to stack the box. He's getting big holes. You have then defenders, particularly the linebackers, right? We always say, who's going to bite on the cheese, right? That's what teams want to see, like, who's going to fall for the bait, and so they can set the trap. We want Alvin Kamara putting up those 7 touchdowns, should have been 8, but so that the defenses have to play that strong. And then guess what? They're not dedicating as many resources to the pass game. And that means we can get Jameis Winston rolling. I'm going to go ahead and call it. Taysom Hill can catch some balls. Go ahead for it. Stunt double. He can catch some balls. We can get that really running and get that confidence in that new offense really humming, but it stems from the offensive line. Good job, Saints. Who dat nation? Who dat said they're going to block that D-line?
You're exactly right. I mean, Drew Brees, that transition from Drew Brees to Jameis Winston, it's going to be not only 2 different quarterbacks with 2 different skill sets. Drew Brees is a guy, and this is the thing with the offensive line. You can't expect Jameis to get rid of the ball as quickly as Drew Brees. And the recognition and pre-snap ability of Drew Brees being in this offense for so long. And that's really his trait of greatness. And then you transition into the new offense, which is going to be more downfield passing, right? That's Jameis Winston's trait. That's what he can do. Drew Brees wasn't doing that at the end of his career. So having that extra second of protection is very important. And lastly, I would just say, like, I know it hasn't worked out for them so far, but learning from Bill Belichick last year, what he did was he franchised Joe Thuney because he understood that they needed to keep the offensive line intact. They lost him this offseason, but they traded for Trent Brown. Obviously, they've spent a lot of priority on their offensive line, which we've talked about as one of the better ones in the league. And that transition from Brady to the next guy, Cam and Mac Jones, is also going to fall on the offensive line. So I think when you go from a Breeze or a Brady to a Winston, and you have to transition with the quarterback that doesn't understand the offense as well, you need good protection. So Ryan Ramczyk back with the Saints for the next 5 years. Hopefully the Saints can maintain their greatness that they've really had for the last decade plus. So we'll
And
take a
Mitch,
break. We'll
wait,
come
Mitch,
back.
I'm
What?
gonna say from the movie Rounders, pay that man his money,
That
right? Like he
was
deserves
actually pretty
that
good.
money, right? Like give that man his money. Like he needs it. He deserves it. I love seeing the O-line finally getting the love that they need just because they're not the ones that we see out front. We got to recognize that literally the entire offense runs through those guys. And if you don't have them, woo, that's when it gets really ugly, really fast. Hashtag Kansas City Chiefs last not so Super Bowl appearance.
Do you have any Oreos over there? All right, we're going to take a break and we'll come back and talk about Stephon Gilmore, who wants more money. We are back here on the Juke with Dr. Jen Welter. Stephon Gilmore, my guy, Stephon Gilmore. I don't want to see him go, Jen. Jen, I get it. Gilmore needs more money, just like Rounders. Pay the man his
Pay
money,
that man his money.
but that's actually really good. Like I honestly, like I mean that. That's actually a really good impression. But I asked you for the Oreos. I guess you don't have any Oreos, but I do think Stephon Gilmore needs some more money. He actually commented to get this thing going a little bit. The Gilly Lock on Twitter. He said, "Oh, okay," to the highest paid DBs in the NFL. So there's this picture: Jalen Ramsey, Marlon Humphrey, Tre'Davious White, Darius Slay. The list goes on and on, Byron Jones, etc. So Stephon Gilmore, since getting to New England, I would say has been the best corner consistently in the league. Last year, you probably concede that to Jalen Ramsey, but Gilmore had some injury issues. We understand that he's getting a little bit older now. I think he's going into like his 30s. So, but he's been so important to the Patriots defense, winning a Super Bowl there, the key play in the Super Bowl with the interception. And even that AFC Championship the year before, batting the ball down from Blake Bortles, and winning Defensive Player of the Year. So he's done quite a bit with the New England Patriots already, and I do think he deserves a raise. Jen, what are your thoughts on this situation, Gilmore and Belichick head to head?
Well, so I do say, hey, Gilmore deserves more, but will he get it from Bill Belichick is the question. Now, Bill has been freewheeling and dealing and spending money.
Yeah.
He is traditionally not spending money with guys to the tail end of their career. And he has
Right.
basically like this is what I will pay you line. And it will be interesting to see, seeing as how, he just lost his Super Bowl, his Super Bowl champion quarterback, Tom Brady, I think, to some of those money moves, which you could get away with when you are a dynasty. But can you get away with them when you didn't make playoffs last year? I don't think you have the same Patriots mystique over you'll take less money because we are who we are. So it's almost like that spell has been broken of like, oh yes, we'll do it because we must be here. And I think there's going to have to be some relationship repair in order to say like, hey, you need leaders. I'm one of the leaders. You're not going to get it right now from having had a quarterback there for 20 years. That stability isn't there. So where is your leadership coming from? And yes, you need those guys on defense, and he is one of them. Again, they are not easy to find. Certain positions you can find a little bit easier than others. Now, this is not one of them.
Shutdown corner is very hard to find.
And you can name them, right?
Yeah.
And there's a reason you can name them. Shutdown corners change the dynamics of your entire defense. If you can take one big receiver out and minimize his impact, it doesn't mean that they're not going to get some, right? Like that's impossible. They know where they're going. These guys don't. But if you can minimize one of their big weapons, then you start looking at how you marshal resources to deal with the other ones, right? Like, do we need to have this one cut coverage? Do we have, a Tampa 2 corner on this? Are we running like, the split coverages where we're just locked down backside, trips by, 3-by-1. We can have a lot of different conversations. If you don't have that lockdown corner, your defense is at the mercy of opposing offenses. And if you don't pay him, first of all, you're going to have problems with everybody looking around and say, who does actually matter to this team? Right?
Right.
Who is it that you value? Obviously, we have a discounted rate quarterback right now.
Yeah.
You let the GOAT go. Who are you paying? And then they start asking, like, where do I fit? And is this the organization that really values me, or do they value each other? And then if it becomes a sharks in the water, you're going to lose a lot of talent. And then that Patriots way, that Patriots mystique that they've had so long, it goes by the wayside.
Yeah, Jen. So you asked who are they paying? So Gilmore has a base salary of $7 million. Again, referring to that picture, that is half of what Marcus Peters and Trey Waynes make, and Trey Wayne isn't even close to the caliber of Stephon Gilmore. So 7 base salary. The Patriots have 14 million in cap space, so they certainly have enough to, if he wants to boost up another 7, certainly could if they wanted to. Now, their highest paid player in base salary is a tie between Devin McCourty and Dante Hightower. Dante Hightower didn't play last year. He was on the COVID list, so he's come back. So those are leaders from their dynasty on defense they'll have back. The thing that I think is so crucial to this conversation is that the Patriots, we've discussed it all offseason, they are in win now mode right now. They're not waiting around. They've literally spent more money than anyone else this offseason. So to literally remove your best player from your team, if you're going to trade him or he's going to sit out, whatever, is suicidal, I'll call it, because you're not going to be what you want to be without that player defensively. This team has the capacity to be, this defense has the capacity to be the best defense in the league if everyone's there with Gilmore. But without him, you become a questionable team of what you're going to do this season.
Right. You're essentially having an identity crisis. That stability needs to be there. And you need to reward the guy who, how I feel about the COVID list. It's a personal preference. I don't hold it against them, but I also do hold the players in high regard that put their personal safety at risk for the good of the team. And so, yes, you get those guys back, and that's great, but they haven't been there in a year. So to get that consistency of leadership and that person who's been your consistent leader on the defense, pay that man his money.
Yeah. I think the last thing I have to say about this situation is Bill Belichick specifically, and the way that he likes to run defense, watching the Patriots over the years, their defense has always been at its best with one shutdown corner. You go back to the early 2000s of Ty Law, and then you go all the way to Darrelle Revis. Gilmore Talib was there. So whenever they've been at their best, they've had that guy. Now you could look at JC Jackson, who's also a very good corner, but how good can it be with both of them there? So I just think you got to pay this guy. I think they will pay this guy. But I do find it very tactical from Gilmore's perspective to start tweeting his intentions, because a lot of Patriots players don't really do that and don't really make it public.
Right. And I think that that's where you're seeing the shift of what happened when you could see that Tom Brady could leave and go somewhere else. I mean, for a long time, Mitch, that was inconceivable, right? Like you wouldn't ever think that could happen. But now that it did, now people are saying, okay, it's my time, right? And if Tommy's going to go and get another Super Bowl and get his money, like, you're either going to give me my money or I am going to take my services elsewhere, because not everybody is cutting their salary so that we can keep the band together, right? So you just paid a lot of money in the offseason. You've showed everybody your hand, Bill. We know that you need to win. Otherwise, those question marks are always going to be there about, was it Brady or was it Belichick? Which drives me nuts, because you can't make that argument. It's both. The magic was the synergy between both, and both got great results because of it. And Tom took a better version of Tom to Tampa, right? And it became Tampa. But you can't extricate the influence that, Bill Belichick had on him over all that years. Like, that's a lot of IP that he got that he wouldn't have gotten from somebody else, i.e. look at Jameis Winston not having a quarterback or not having a team that infused knowledge into him and made him better and better and better consistently. So, right now, Bill needs to win. He's not on the hot seat to get fired. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is he is having legacy questions. And this is one of the greatest football minds out there. This is one of the greatest football minds of all time. So he needs to come back in a big, big way, at least get back into playoffs and really look respectable. You don't have to get in the Super Bowl this year, but you can't miss playoffs. And so you also can't let your superstars go out of the door, and you don't have a valid argument because you still have cap space.
Right. I'll just say, okay, let's say if the Patriots don't re-sign him for whatever reason and they do decide to trade him. Let's throw a few teams out there that you think could use the services of one Stephon Gilmore.
All of them. Except for maybe the Minnesota Vikings, because they've been collecting corners this year.
Okay, the Vikings, I think at this point have gone a little far. I mean, they've added 5-6 corners. So I think they don't need him. It would be a little redundant. I know one team.
I don't think the Broncos
should I throw them out there
either,
because they're your favorite team in the league? The Seattle Seahawks? Here's the problem with the Seahawks, though. I don't think they have any money, and I don't think they have any picks. So I don't know how that's going to work, but they certainly could use him.
You know why they need him? Part of the reason why they need him? Because they don't have a D line to put any pressure on the other quarterbacks. So yes, you need lockdown corners because they're going to have to cover for 75 seconds because nobody's going to pressure on the quarterback, especially if they don't get their safety who led the team in sacks, Jamal Adams, back on their roster. So yes, they could use him, but also I'd rather they picked up a D lineman.
Okay.
And
I'm just going to take a look at the cap space right now to see if there's some teams.
Who's got the money?
But I think Gilmore also, I don't know what Gilmore thinks or what he wants, but I look at a team like the Chargers. They have $19 million. They're a team on the rise. And of course, they have Brandon Staley now as their head coach who had Jalen Ramsey. So it would make a lot of sense for them to bring in a guy like Gilmore as they're transitioning their defense. They certainly have the money. 49ers have needed a corner for quite some time. They have $17 million in cap space, and that's really their only weakness on their entire team. A lot of teams or a lot of people have thrown out the Browns, but it feels like they've kind of fixed that over the course of the offseason with their secondary, so it doesn't really make so much sense. At the top, you have the Jags, obviously. The Jets, that's not going to happen. The Broncos, they're good at that position. The Lions, they're not in position to trade for anybody.
Look, just stop lying. Just stop lying. Let's not even talk about them. They're just going to be a problem. Just go bite a kneecap or something.
Then you get to the teams under the Patriots in salary. Like the Colts, the Atlanta Falcons, the Vikings.
Falcons could be a smart one.
Yeah.
Falcons could use some help on defense. They're going to be pretty dominant on offense. The games that slipped away last year were defensive losses. And they are trying to, really refresh that team. I would like the Falcons.
Here's my problem with that is I feel like it would have happened. You just don't want him
to go to a waste of space place, right?
Yeah.
Stephon, don't get your money and then go somewhere where you're going to be
yeah, I don't want him to go to the Jags, personally. That's just me.
Right.
The Steelers
could use him.
They're in win now mode and they need corners. So that would really make, I know their defense was already good. They've lost a couple players in the secondary. That would put them right back in the conversation as the best defense in the league. So that would be really interesting.
Do they have money?
Your Cardinals.
Do they have money?
They have $13 million, Steelers.
Okay.
Because
I like the Steelers.
DeCastro just retired, so that opened up a bunch of money for them.
Got it. That was the found money.
Yes. So they have plenty of decisions over there at Pittsburgh. They're going to be an interesting team to watch in July and in August with some veterans. I know there's a couple names that have been thrown out there. They signed, I think, Trey Turner from the former Panthers guard. And I know like Justin Houston and a couple guys have been thrown out there for potential signings for them. Cardinals. What do you think about the Cardinals? They have 11 million in cap.
Cardinals would be very smart to invest that 11 million in cap to take us to Stephon Gilmore, right? You lost your rock at corner, letting Pat P go to the Vikings, who are obviously collecting corners. And Pat P is now making Justin Jefferson even better. So you're going to need that guy. You've got Budda Baker and some of those guys in the secondary, and you're going to get a lot of pressure from that front with Chandler Jones and, JJ and Marcus. So if you could put a guy like that locking down half the field, oh yeah, it's gonna get even uglier, right? You already know that I think that's a team on the rise.
Yeah.
It's one of the ones that could, as we said, they could fly Cardinals fly, or they could flap themselves into exhaustion, right? Like they could fall flat, but I think they are a team on the rise. You put a guy like that into the loss of what I would say was Patrick P for your steady Eddie at corner. Could be a really nice move.
Plus they have Malcolm Butler. And
how old is Malcolm Butler now?
I want to say he's like 32 or 33. They played together.
Yeah.
Year.
They'd be bringing that Patriots way back.
Yeah.
And very different guys in how they play the game. So yeah, I mean, that would be great.
Going down the list, continuing the Bills, that's not going to happen. The Ravens, that's not going to happen. The Seahawks, 8 million. Chiefs, that's not going to happen. Titans, probably not, although they could maybe use him. How about this one, Jen? I have two before we take a commercial break here. The Los Angeles Rams, 6 million in cap space. They have Jalen Ramsey. They went all in on Matthew Stafford. I don't know if they have any picks, but that would just be amazing, I think.
If you could put Stephon Gilmore and Jalen Ramsey locking down both, I mean, nasty coverage. And then you put Donald disrupting, you're going to have a lot of turnovers. They actually might look like they were trying to play, shutdown defense. They might be going for Coach Chen's shutdown defense, which notoriously, if they can't score, they can't win, because that's going to be ugly. If you have Donald disrupting and then they don't want to go at Jalen, right? They don't want to go at him, which means they're going to be forced to go at Stephon Gilmore. What? Oh, yeah. Now, I don't know if you said he already has 7 that he's getting, like his base is 7. So I don't know if they could quite afford him, but that would be a money move that might be. That
would be a potential like favorite changer type thing, like Super Bowl favorite conversation changing thing.
Oh, there. For sure. So, if you put Stephon Gilmore either with the Arizona Cardinals or the LA Rams, it is absolutely shaking up that division. And as you know, we've said it, it's one of the best divisions in football. And you could even say that it does it with the 49ers, but I don't know that it has the same real impact to me as it does if you go with the Cardinals or the Rams.
I was going to lastly throw the Cowboys out, but I just don't think the Cowboys are interested in recruiting a corner just based on Dan Quinn's history of defense. I don't think like Gilmore doesn't really fit the defense, but I mean, they definitely need defense. So
look, Mitch, they need a lot. Them Cowboys had no D in Dallas last year. It was the Alice Cowboys. It was painful to watch. One of my videos even got censored because I said there was no D in Dallas. Like, not even kidding.
Really?
Yes. Because apparently they thought I was talking about some other kind of D.
Okay.
But it was just atrocious. But the truth is that, like, looking at it last year, it was almost like, you have a dam that's springing like 1 hole and 2 holes and 3 holes, and you're trying to like it's like the old school cartoon. We don't actually know enough on what that Dallas defense is going to look like to know where they really need to bring other guys in, right? Obviously, they've made huge improvements. I think, well, first of all, in getting rid of the coordinator. And some of my coaching buddies had called that one before it even started.
Okay.
I know I brought that up to you a while. They were like, I know other guys who had been around that, and they're like, he was bad then. Like, one of my friends literally said, that dude got us all fired. And he's not a defensive coach, just so you know. So I knew that was going to be a problem. So now we have Dan Quinn. I mean, you essentially have a head coach for the defense now, and there's going to be a lot of changes. I just don't think we've seen enough. And we do know what he's done historically, and you're very correct on that. We don't know enough to know where they need to invest to bring in another like kind of big guy. I think you'll know a lot more about them throughout the season in free agency, and maybe they'll see it in camp early. But I don't think that, for me, that's not the place that I want Stephon Gilmore to go into the hot mess situation. And number two, I don't think they know themselves well enough to say that's the move that we go all in with.
Okay, fair enough. All right. So we'll take a break and we'll come back and we'll discuss some potential big bounce back candidates for the 2021 NFL season. Who's going to have a big bounce back season? Bounce back season. The 2021 NFL season is just around the corner. It's going to get here sooner than you think. And we're going to have some players and some teams that have bounce back years. We do every year, and it's usually some of the best stories we get all season long. Jen, let's start with the teams. Let's do 3 teams that you think had a bad year last year that have the potential to have a good year this year. Good can be subjective. It could be make the playoffs. It could be win the Super Bowl. It could be win 7 games. Who is a bounce back candidate for you?
So I've got 4 for you for different reasons.
Okay.
Number one, I've talked about them a lot. 49ers, they were uncharacteristically bad because of injuries and situations, right? They were displaced from their home at one time. You know, I remember when they played Washington, it was like, oh, look, the team with no name is playing the team with no home. COVID displaced them for a month after being subjected to just injury after injury after injury and taking a contender and making them look like a pretender. So I think 49ers bounce back because they just brought a lot of those pieces back together. The next one I'm really interested in is, you know, that team I was just talking about last year. They were the Alice Cowboys. They're
definitely one.
Painful, right? I want to see if them boys can become damn men this season, because they did look like little boys, right? Do we have boys to men? So will we have the Cowboys go boys to men? Like, that should be their theme song. Like, we're going to hit boys to men a cappella style on you and make you sing a different tune about our team in Texas, because that was terrible. So that is my number 2 bounce back that I want to talk about. Of course, we have your guys up in New England. Dollar Bill has been spending his money. Hopefully he will spend a little bit more to keep Stephon Gilmore, but they won't miss the playoffs this year. They'll be back in action, and they'll kind of recommend, like, it'll be like, oh, have you forgotten? Say my name, say my name, say my name, right? Like, that's what it's going to be. They're going to come back and they'll be like, damn, it was really nice when it was a win against New England. Like, they're going to be flipping those L's into dubs.
Yeah.
What's up with the Patriots? And then the last one that I think we have to respect because of Trevor Lawrence. Is the Jaguars can't be as terrible as they were last year. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to be the turnaround team of the decade and Urban Meyer's going to come in and take them to a championship. Slow your roll, Big Posse. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that they will not be as terrible as they were before.
Those are great teams. I mean, those are great choices. That's a lot of my choices personally. So to go through a few teams myself that I think potentially, I don't know if you would necessarily, because those are like especially the ones that you said, the 49ers, the Cowboys, the Patriots, they're like true bounce back teams because they're like, they had one bad year sort of thing, and then they're coming back. So like, I guess I'll try to find some teams where it's more like bounce back, but it's kind of a little longer term sort of thing. Right. So for me, let's start with a team in the NFC South, because I do think there's going to be one other team that's good. Now, the Saints wouldn't be one because the Saints were good last year, so they're not a bounce back. The Carolina Panthers, I think, are a potential bounce back team. They quietly added a lot of players to their defense this offseason. I think they're going to be exponentially better on that side of the ball. We've seen Matt Rule kind of have a history as a coach from the college level to the pro level, where every season in college, his team got better and better and better from a wins and losses perspective. I like Joe Brady a lot as their offensive coordinator. Sam Darnold, I think, is going to be solid. I like the offense. Christian McCaffrey's back. DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson. I think they've got a good offense. So I wouldn't be shocked if this was somewhat a wild card team in the NFC. I do really think they can take that sort of step. At the very least, they'll be better than they were last year. And they haven't really quite been good since Cam was healthy there for Carolina. So Carolina is a team to look out for.
I think they'll be a fun team to watch, right?
Yeah.
I remember, I think it was like their first, it had to be their first game. There was something where they had like 11 penalties or they had 11 Emmys. Like there was something really bad on defense. Like it was 11 something of terrible. And I just remember being like, oh, you can't win that way. But yet they weren't so far out of it. Considering that, like I was like, ooh, if they could get that fixed, right? Like, so it was one of those things where I'm like, ooh, that's really sloppy, but you're coming off COVID. You're talking new stuff.
The thing with their defense last year, they surprised me how good they were last year.
Yep.
Their defense, like when you looked at them on paper last year, it's like, who are these guys? And then they coached them up and they played well. So that's another reason for them to be much better. Cause now you would say they have actual talent there, I guess. But
right. So I like that call a lot, Mitch. I think they're getting their groove, right? Like considering what they started with and how they fixed a lot of things and they continued to trend upwards. I think that's going to be a fun team to watch next year. And, can we get a redemption story maybe?
Sammy.
I mean, please prove to everybody, like, because I would love that I'm a big fan of redemption stories, right? Like the ones who get written off and then they come back and smack you in the mouth, right? Like I really, really that. So I hope he is able to come and smack them in the mouth.
I hope so too. I hope Sam Darnold does well. Now, a team that I think's very similar to the Panthers in the NFC to the AFC is the Chargers, because the Chargers were really good like a couple of years ago, but they've been kind of bad recently. And this year, I think they're more of a breakout candidate than a bounce back candidate sort of thing. But I look at them and I say, this is their year to take a significant step forward. Same thing with the Panthers, new coaching regime, although it's the first year, but I think that will be, I'm a big believer in Brandon Staley as the head coach. I'm a big believer in Justin Herbert. I like what they've done with the offensive line. I think the defensive talent is there. They've always been a roster that's been known as being very talented. They just haven't been able to put it all together. So I look at the Chargers as kind of the equivalent to the Panthers in each conference. But a true bounce back candidate to me, and this will be my final one, I guess, is the Minnesota Vikings. I think the Minnesota Vikings are a huge bounce back candidate because they're a true bounce back candidate. They were a playoff team 2 years ago. They took a step back last year. Last year at this time, I remember saying, Vikings fans, you're going to be mad at me because I'm going to say you're going to miss the playoffs because now you have all these young players that you're having to replace with veteran known commodities. But next year you'll be back. That's exactly what I think is going to happen because they've gotten those proven commodities now back in the secondary on the defensive line. I mean, their best defensive player is back. Danielle Hunter didn't play all last year. Michael Pierce, Patrick Peterson, all these guys on the defense. And then offensively, their offensive line from the draft is improved. Obviously, they have Cousins and Jefferson and Thielen and Cook. So they're a team that I think will be actually quietly one of the better teams in their conference this year. I think I'm really that high on the Vikings with the talent, the coaching, and I do think it's a huge bounce back year for them.
I agree, and it's a must-win year for them, in terms of where they've
That
been,
too.
in terms of the
Yep.
talent that they've collected. You know, and you see them doing that now. I think they could successfully run dime coverage throughout the year with the collection of cornerbacks and secondary that they have.
Yeah.
This is the one thing that I just kind of wonder, are you guys expecting to run dime coverage on the regular? Or are you
Maybe.
trying to say that we have...
Well, if they have to play the Bucks.
Right. I mean, you know, I think nickel's probably a better bet, but, you know, we could see dime at that rate with the talent that they've been collecting. Maybe they see one of their safeties playing a little bit of a Jamal Adams role, kind of throwing that up. Maybe you'll mix some people in and how they challenge the box. You could also see, I mean, I remember being with the Cardinals when we walked Deion Buchanan down and actually switched him from safety to linebacker to be able to handle some of those teams that were, you know, coming out with the mismatches in terms of, you know, receiving cores. But I will be interested to see what they do on the defensive side of the ball, because I just don't know what it is yet. And yes, they are stacking talent. And I cannot, like, we talked about Justin Jefferson a little bit in the beginning, but being on the field with him, like, he's a special guy, right? Like, and you can see it in the little things, in the movement, in the energy, even how he said, like, you know, it's a ballsy move, right? To have literally stolt, as I told him, you stole the rookie receiving record from Anquan Bolden, right? He was 1377. You took him down with 1400. And he's like, yeah, I stole it, coach. I said you did. And now you're calling out one of the best because you are one of those LSU Tigers. And I will take a tiger by the tail and put him on my team every day, because of the special guys I've had the opportunity to be on the field with. Every time I'm around one of those LSU Tigers, there's really something special. And his older brothers had played with Pat P, and that's kind of why he knew that this was the guy to go to put more tools in your tool chest. So you have a guy like that, and then you put him with Thielen. And oh, by the way, you have Delvin Cook, which means we can't just say we're going to stop Thielen, we're going to stop Justin Jefferson. You have one of the most dominant running backs in the game, and Kirk Cousins, who can go. I think we forget about Kirk Cousins sometimes in talking about those top tier quarterbacks, but he has the ability with weaponry around him to start putting up those audacious numbers. And I agree, Mitch. I don't think of them as a bounce back team as much. So it's probably why it wasn't on the forefront of my mind.
Well, they are, because they didn't make the playoffs.
No, you're correct. But when thinking of them, I wasn't like, oh, who really was like, but could come forward, right? San Francisco to me was like,
clear.
Oh gosh, right? Like,
I think people, because they were kind of like the Vikings
ish. They were right there-ish.
Yeah, they were close. But they were close in a year where I would say, like, they really shouldn't have been as close as they were.
Right.
Sort of thing.
Right. And you have, you know, the rookie leader coming back for a second season, and you've put more weaponry around him. Like, that's pretty nice. And Delvin Cook, I mean, you know, other than freaking Big Henry, like, that's the guy I want. So you put all those pieces in place, they're nasty this year. They are straight up nasty. And, you know, it's going to be like the purple people eater chewing up dubs. Like they'll take Jameis Winston's weird little hand thing and chew up those dubs, because Skold is going to be like, for real. You might want to get up on your Vikings show. I really did like that show. You might want to watch Vikings, because they're going to look like that. Conquering some fields, no doubt. No doubt.
Get it? Conquering some fields. Do you get that one?
I did.
Okay, yeah.
I did. I like that you see, this is why we work well together. Like I didn't know if
that's where you were going, but yeah, I picked up on it.
But like, you know, I throw those things out there and you actually pick them up and you're like, I got it.
Yeah.
Which I love. I did see one of the questions come in there.
Jen, your cards from Coach
Right.
Laxer.
Coach Laxer about my cards. I don't think of them again as a necessarily bounce back team, which is what we're talking about right now. But I do think that they will be a team to watch. They have the potential this year to be quite explosive. And as we were talking about them earlier, I don't know if you caught it. We talked about them being a potential landing spot for Stephon Gilmore. If you put him in there, they go from being this could be one of the best to really being tough to handle and tough to find a space and a place where you could take advantage of that defense. So definitely look for the Cardinals to be a strong team this year. The addition of Stephon Gilmore to me would really make them hard to handle, because then you're not really finding a place on that defense that you can take advantage of. So I like the Cards, but I don't think of them as one of the quote unquote bounce back teams.
Yeah, they're more kind of, to me, like if you had to give them a name, it would be breakout team, because they haven't really had the breakout yet with Kyler Murray. It's the same thing I was talking about kind of with the Chargers.
Yep, I agree. But I am excited to see what they do this year. And let's go back to the Chargers, because hello, they were contenders they were knocking on the door of the Chiefs. They were challenging Tampa Bay. I mean, no, they didn't put it all together to get those wins. But I remember like starting to be like, wait a minute.
Yeah, okay, like Herbert's like first start went to overtime versus the Chiefs.
Right. Like, yeah, they're good. And their defense was really pretty dominant. Now, they did lose my dude Perryman. I hated to see them let him go, because who's
on the Panthers, by the way.
Right. I know, which again, we'll be happy to watch them, and I will see him there. They did lose him, but I think that the Chargers, especially under a new regime, who, I love that move of like, we stole your coach from right across the town, right? This could end up being a real crosstown rivalry, because he's been in that meeting room, right? You talk about, and now granted, it had to be executed by Jared Goff, not Matty Stafford, so it's a lot different, but he knows how Sean McVay thinks, right? Like, they've been out on the field facing each other time after time after time. So this little LA could be like worse than Bloods versus Crips.
I wish they played more. That's the only thing.
I know, and it's probably smart that they don't, but it could start to get bloody in terms of a rivalry. Like when you dig in and steal somebody's coach, and you've been in those meeting rooms, and you're in the same city, you're in the same stadium.
Yeah, just looking at the Chargers again, first round Rashawn Slater, who we loved, Corey Linsley at center, who they added, getting Derwin James back, who missed the whole year, who's an absolute stud. Getting who'd they get here? Who am I missing? Damn. Oh, Austin Eckler, who missed like 6-7 games last year, who's their running back. They've added a lot of pieces. Asante Samuel Jr., who I really liked at corner in the second round. Yep. So they have a nice blend of young youth and also some veteran experience with guys like Keenan Allen and Jared Cook at tight end. So yeah, definitely the Chargers are a team to look out for. Let's move on to some players to wrap up here. Some potential bounce back candidates for players. I'll give you maybe 3, and I'll take 3.
I'm going to go with my number 1 bounce back, Jameis Winston.
Okay.
I got to start there, because I mean, Jameis has been in quarterback school for the last year, and he has had the opportunity to learn the offense with Sean Payton, sit in the rooms with Drew Brees. It's going to be a big year for Jameis. And I think you'll see Taysom Hill used pretty smart, in a smart way too, to complement. I don't actually see him not being in the mix kind of in the same way he was with Drew Brees on some of that. Like, Jameis is a big arm, big guy, but I'm not putting him as, my dynamic run play guy. I might sub him out, even some goal line stuff with Taysom. I think you could have some fun with it. So I think that they could be really creative in there. And I look to Sean Payton to do that. So he is definitely my number 1. And I'm going to stick with another number one. I'm going to go with Cam Newton up in New England. Now I have heard the things about Mac Jones and will he be there, but I don't think it's going to be his job right away, even though
I don't
Mac
either.
Jones is looking good. But Cam Newton has a lot to prove. Like this is make it or break it. It is kind of for both of them, but Cam was under center last year and Jameis wasn't. So Cam, you had flashes of brilliance. We all know the guy that you can be. I mean, now with a year under his belt with Josh McDaniels, not having COVID, actually getting a lot of the components back to the Patriots. So it's not just, hey, Cam, let's put the whole team on your shoulders and you have to be Superman. I think he'll be expected to do a little less. And his defense will be, back in the position where they're giving him great field position. They're doing a lot of that stuff. And then Cam really gets to come into his own. And we know that the Patriots have a chip on their shoulders. So let's look for that to be really all over the play of Cam Newton, right? And not because it's just him, but because it doesn't have to be just him this year. I think there were times when literally last year it was like Cam's the man and Cam has to do everything, and he wasn't there yet. So this year he'll actually be asked to do a little less, which means he'll have the chance to do a whole lot more. And then I'm going to go one more quarterback with you. I think we'll see not that he will do it on his own, Jimmy G, but he will have the weaponry around him with the 49ers back in play to not be terrible this year.
Okay. That's a big compliment. He won't be terrible.
He won't be terrible. I mean, he was bad last year.
Yeah,
he was bad last year. But you also took all of the things that, made them great, which was this dominant run game, this fullback tight end down your throat. And then when we get you off balance, we're expecting, you come up and we're able to use some of those other weapons and make passes. They didn't have that. So it was a little bit of a toothless tiger last year. So by putting those weapons back around him, Jimmy, again, will be asked to do less, and he will in as a result be able to do more.
Fair enough. My three. Let's start with continuing my Panthers theme with Sam Darnold. Okay, so Sam Darnold is going to be a bounce back this year because, well, let's be honest, he's never really had a breakout year. So, but bounce back in the sense that I think this will be his best season as a pro he's ever had. I think when you look at the situation around him, it's better at every level, from coaching, head coach and offensive coordinator, to the offensive line, to the running game and the running back, the receivers, all of it, even the defense to some degree is better. I just think the talent around in Carolina is a lot better. And as you've been saying with Jimmy Garoppolo, Jameis Winston, and Cam Newton, he'll do less. I think he'll be forcing less. He won't be losing right away, having to force the ball into tight coverages and throwing picks and that sort of thing. He'll be able to gain confidence. I think this system fits him well, and I think he'll be able to thrive there. So I think Sam Darnold's my number one. Now for 2 and 3, I'm going to get away from quarterback because Jen gave you 3 good quarterbacks.
And yet there's a lot this year.
There's a lot. I mean, I could have added Carson Wentz as another example, but I know that you don't like that one.
I mean, he can't be worse.
He can't be worse. It's a true bounce back. It's definition.
Yeah. So he can't be worse. So yeah. I'll give you that. I'll give you that an easy one.
I'm going to go with 2 of my favorite players in the NFL. So I think the Cleveland Browns are going to be phenomenal. One player that's coming back from injury is Odell Beckham Jr. And I think finally he's going to have his big year with the Browns this year. He looks pretty good in his workouts, running real fast. We had some comments from Jarvis Landry saying he looks great. So I think Odell will be back for camp, back healthy. And I think this team now that he's seen how good they can be without him, it's going to motivate him to be great with him. Okay. So I think Odell Beckham will be big this year. And then lastly, another guy who played in New York, that's Saquon Barkley, another one of my favorite players. He is back from injury as well with the Giants. I think the Giants, I know Jen doesn't agree because she doesn't love Daniel Jones. I think they might have a good year this year. I'm not exactly sold, but I can see them taking that step forward. And I think Saquon has to be a big part of that. And I just want to see him back healthy, consistently putting on a show in that backfield. So those are my 3 bounce back candidates for 2021.
I'm going to say I absolutely cannot wait to see Saquon Barkley back because he makes me actually want to tune into that team.
Yeah.
And so again, like he hasn't been there, so he's definitely going to be better. It makes all of New York better because Daniel Jones needs him, right?
Have you seen the numbers in comparison with Daniel Jones without Saquon and Daniel Jones with Saquon? It's actually staggering, the difference between how good Daniel Jones is with Saquon and without Saquon. I don't know if Matt can find those, but I mean, it's just crazy, the difference. So yeah, he has an impact, not just as a running back, but also on the team.
Of course he does. I mean, and here's the thing, right? Like it also goes to what defenses have to do when we say we've got to pick our poison of what we're going to take away. Every defense has a way that they're going to attack the offense. And so guess what? You take Saquon Barkley out of the equation and you just took away one of their biggest weapons, and we don't really have to look at stopping the run game, so we can completely focus on stopping a subpar quarterback. I mean, because he is okay when you put him with a great running back, right? That's why you have them. That's why you need them, because it pulls the attention of the defense or splits it, right? Even think about the fundamentals of the linebacker position. Your first step is forward to take away the run first, right? So that is their read. They're a run read first defender. Even if they're in coverage, their first responsibility is still your first step forward. If you don't have a running back, I don't even realize, like, my first step becomes, yeah, right. Right? Like, it's like, because they're not doing anything.
Right.
So I'm not concerned, which means even when we talk about the coverages that we call, we're also talking about the individual mentality of those run first defenders who no longer have to do it. And oh, by the way, that frees up your D line to not only hold the line, but really to almost, I mean, they're, always penetration first, but really almost go full penetration mode because you don't have anybody who's keeping him honest from the running back position.
Good point. Yeah.
You put him back in, and absolutely those numbers should be staggeringly different, right? Like they absolutely should be a difference because I'm not worried about freaking Daniel Jones. I'm not.
Is that it right there? What does it say?
I don't know. I can't see it. It's small on my screen. It's small to me. Can you read them? Matthew, our super voice.
I don't think we've ever heard his voice on the show.
Yes, the voice is here. Oh, there we go.
Daniel Jones has a passer rating of, does that say 94.5?
91.5.
91.5. Okay, so that's a lot better. 23 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. Yeah, there it is. In 12 games with Saquon Barkley in his career. Yeah, that's a lot better. If you just compare those numbers versus like last year's numbers, that is a different world. So, yeah. And then you add on Kenny Golladay and you add on our guy Kadarius Toney from the draft, who they've also added to the receiving core, and those numbers should only get better for Daniel Jones. So that's big for the Giants for sure.
Yeah, and they will on both, right? They'll get better on Saquon as well because it's not such a one-dimensional offense, even in terms of who you have to shut down from the passing game, right? What you want from an offensive perspective is to make the defense unsure, right? To make them have to split their resources, because you can do all things, but you can't do all things really well against really great players. If somebody's average, then yeah, I know I can take them away with the one-on-one. But, when you take a mobile quarterback, for example, I don't have to worry about that with Daniel Jones, okay? But when you take a mobile quarterback, now you're pulling a spy into him, and it gives you a numbers mismatch because I have to watch him and, look at him and honor him as a run threat like I do with somebody like, say, Cam Newton, right? Or Russell Wilson. Like I've got to honor them with that because they can hurt me in that way, right? And my D line has to take a more caged approach, right? So if we call cage, that means basically get the quarterback in the middle and close it down. Whereas, you're coming from an outside in and you're doing it slow because you can't get beat to the outside. When you have like a unmobile quarterback, you don't have to worry about that. And when you don't have a devastating back in the backfield, it's like this. We're not worried about anybody breaking our outside contain, so our angles are sharper. Everything happens faster. So now in the reverse, when you talk about the impact of having those receiving threats on a running back, is that we can't dedicate other guys to say spy the backfield or spy the running back. We have to honor, from our secondary, for example, pass first and then have them coming up onto the run game, which means if they break a tackle, there's going to be, or if they get out, right, escape that first level, then there's going to be a lot more yards then you will have a lot more yards after contact, right? So those decisions, even how you allocate the resources to shut down the run or the pass, all those things have to work together. And the Giants have done a good job to put some of those pieces in place, which means that defenses are going to have a harder time making that team one-dimensional.
All right, there you have it. The bounce back candidates for 2021. Let us know your bounce back candidates in the comments, on social media, where you can find us at the Juke Pod on Twitter, Instagram. Of course, make sure you give us a little follow or a subscription on YouTube or on Twitch. We will be here every single week live on Wednesday, and we got a lot of exciting stuff planned for the summer leading into the season. So thanks for watching.
It's going to be so much fun.
It is.
Y'all, it's going to be so much fun. You better like, subscribe, follow, do all of that for all of us, because we have great big plans for you. I know you can't get enough of the Juke with Jen and Mitch. So go ahead, get in where we fit in your life, plan it every week. And we will be doing it big time after time after time. Mitch, as always, it has been a pleasure. Stop trying to look like Zach Wilson. Or I guess I should
He's trying to look like me.
I was going to say, I guess I should call him and say, hey, stop trying to bite my guy Mitch's style. Maybe that's the call I need to make later today.
Maybe. But we love Zach Wilson. Go Jets. Not really, because Patriots don't want the Jets to do well, but go Giants. All right. Thanks for watching. It's Mitch. It's Jen. Peace.